Alright guys, so I stumbled across this video that I just had to share because young boys like this, young men like this, should be protected at all costs. As this young teenage boy silenced his feminist teacher doing a class presentation on feminism. And I gotta tell you guys, this is very satisfying to watch. And I think that this kid deserves an A+ for this presentation. Take a look.
The definition of feminism is equality between men and women, if you look it up on Google. In this presentation, I'm going to prove to you that in 2016 is not the case. There was a first wave of feminism, the suffragettes, who campaigned for the vote and for equality, and then there was second wave feminism in around the 60s, campaigned for equality in domestic gender roles and things like that. So, and then recently there's been a third wave feminism, who have consistently lied about things. For example, the wage gap between men and women. That is a lie. 77 cents to the dollar is a lie. It doesn't take into account the different hours worked by men and women on average in jobs. It doesn't take into account the different jobs that men and women do. And it doesn't take into account many other factors. Once you factor all these in, it is statistically irrelevant, that the wage gap. This is just one example of the lies that have been perpetrated by modern third wave feminism. They hate free speech. They don't like it when their opinions are challenged. They try to ban words like bossy, and they try to ban things on Twitter. They try to ban people from having their opinion. They don't like other people's opinions. The imbalances on people have flipped, and feminism says that it's about equality, but I've never once seen a feminist campaign against the fact that, on average, women, if they a man, they get 2 years, 3 years in jail. But if it happens the other way around, it's 20 years. Surely if they're about equality, shouldn't it be the same for both genders? Other flip gender imbalances include not really flip, but gender imbalances include the massive suicide rate of men under 30. I've never heard a feminist or a third wave feminist once speak about how bad this is. It's not about equality. It's not. It's about lying. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Would you consider yourself a feminist?
No, Harry, I would not, because I don't believe... Well, I believe in equality, but I don't believe in feminism, because I believe that that's not about equality.
Originally, feminism was created because there was an imbalance.
Yeah.
And originally, it was the imbalance between men and women. The idea now is not feminism being an imbalance of gender, but being equality of all. You talk a lot about men versus women. But what about people who call themselves transgender? What about people that perhaps don't identify with a gender at all?
In relation to what?
How they should be perceived by society. Do they not count in the idea of feminism?
Well, no, because feminism, if you look up the definition, which if you ask a feminist, they'll always refer you to, is about the push for women's rights and equality between men and women.
If I call myself a feminist, I wouldn't say that I battle for the rights of women. I would say I battle for the rights of equality. So when we talk about the shift of language and definitions, is it not fair to say that definitions shift and change depending on the need within society?
Well, just because you say you are something doesn't mean that that's what the movement is about. So I could say that I'm a radical jihadist. Doesn't mean that I'm a radical jihadist. Well, because you can say that you're something, but the movement doesn't necessarily represent that. If you say that you're about equality for all, then most of feminism isn't about equality for all. It's about equality between men and women. That's what modern feminism is about. For example, with the wage gap, when they give you the wage gap statistics, 77 cents to the dollar, they don't mention other people who may not identify with the gender or people who identify themselves as trans. So that's the main thing that I'm fighting.
Okay. So yeah, I'd say that there is equally a disparity between class systems. So if you are born into a certain class of family, your income equates to a certain amount. And that's purely with how you're born, which is a very similar thing to do with gender. Do you think that that is as much of an issue, if not more so, or less so, than gender inequality?
Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about gender inequality and how it's misrepresented by feminism because they're saying that they're for gender equality when they're actually not.
Okay, so what are your thoughts on inequality in general, including the class system?
Well, ideally, I would like to eradicate all inequalities, but I'm not going to do that by calling myself a feminist.
Yeah, so that kid deserved an A+ for that presentation, right? Because he actually did silence that teacher who were asking a bunch of questions that I thought were kind of irrelevant. In the sense that I'm not sure if this teacher knows or understands that radical feminists and the transgender movement are opposed. As in, they are in opposition to each other because radical feminists, they oppose the idea of the female brain. Transgender people, specifically men that want to be women, they say that, hey, I am a woman, I am a female because I was born with a female's brain, but in a man's body. That's the argument. And radical feminists, they believe that the difference between men and women is only there because that is what society imposes on women. For example, women to be sexually attractive, to be nurturing, to be deferential to men. The only reason women think or act differently than men is simply because of societal expectations. It's imposed on them. In this sense, gender is not seen as an identity as much as seen as a caste system. And because of that, a trans woman who is a man that identifies as a woman is still a man. And they're a man in virtue of the fact that they have a choice in regards to being a part of the lower caste, which is to be a woman, according to radical feminists. So a transgender woman would retain male privilege in the sense that they have a choice to be a woman. I don't think this teacher actually understands radical feminists versus, the transgender movement and how, again, they are opposed to each other. And it would make sense considering how radical feminists are supposed to be fighting for equality with men. Except it's not actually really about equality, which is what this bright student pointed out, right? It's not actually really about equality. It's actually really about power because they really don't care about equality to men if the inequality benefits them as women, okay? They're not concerned about the male suicide rate, which is significantly higher than women. They're not concerned about the male homelessness rate, which is also significantly higher than women, and the expectations around a woman being homeless versus a man. Okay, a man is expected to just, hey, fend for yourself. You're a man, right? Do better. A woman, on the other hand, especially if she has kids, you're expected to feel bad for her. You're expected to pity her. They never have anything to say about anytime there is an incident of domestic violence or abuse. The man is always looked at as the aggressor, and the woman always gets the benefit of the doubt, even though 1 in 3 victims of domestic abuse in this country are male. And at least half of men that are victims of domestic abuse actually never report it, so it could be higher. And in fact, 11% of male victims compared to 7.2% of female victims reported that they've considered taking their own life because of domestic abuse from their partner. So again, when it comes to case of domestic abuse, a man is more likely to take his life than a woman. They're not concerned about how men get screwed over in the court system when it comes to child custody and child support, and also when it comes to divorce as well too. Men get screwed all over the place, but you don't hear women or radical feminists fighting for these inequalities to be solved because these inequalities benefit them. Again, it reminds me of the race hustlers, right? The race hustlers of America who claim that they're fighting against racism, systemic racism, yet they support affirmative action, which is a classic example of systemic racism against Asians, mostly, and whites. But they believe in this thing called anti-racism, which means that in order to actually be fighting against racism, you have to be racist. You have to be racist towards whites, mainly, okay, in order to be anti-racist. So again, they're not concerned about equality because they don't want to be treated equal. They actually want special rights and privileges. Again, the same way that radical feminists, they're not concerned about actual equality to men, having the same expectations, when it comes to work or whatever, and roles in society and responsibility and accountability, most importantly. Nope, what they're actually really concerned about is just having special rights and privileges that men don't have, right? It is the accumulation of power. Okay, so again, I thought that presentation there from that young man was excellent, right? I love how he kind of silenced that teacher. She really did not have anything to say. And I think the cherry on top was the students in class who I believe actually agreed with this young man in his presentation. So yeah, if I was that teacher, I would give him an A+, right? Even though he schooled a teacher, he should get an A+ just for that. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.